Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of North Sydney Council. A particular welcome to councillors and members of the public who are joining us in the gallery this evening and to everyone joining us online. Before we begin, I'll call on Councillor Keane to give the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of all present and those watching on webcast, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands in which we meet and pay our respect to the ancestors and spirits past and present.
Thank you. We've had an application for a leave of absence from Councillor Hoy. Councillor Berrigan move the leave of absence, seconded by Councillor Keane. Put that to the meeting. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Are there any disclosures of interest for items on the agenda? No. This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. It's a reminder that under the Code of Meeting Practice, councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during council meetings, and councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. That brings us to confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Antonini. Any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Councillors, there have been a request by a member of the public to address two items on the agenda. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we open the public forum for items 10.2 and 10.3, inviting the Speaker to address the Council before debate.
Is there a seconder for that procedural motion? Seconded by Councillor Antonini. I put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. So that brings us directly to item 10.2. Mr. Loiterton has registered to speak and I'd call him to come and address Council. Good evening.
Good evening.
Your name and who you represent.
Great. George Loiterton from Florence Street in Cremorne as a local resident. Just looking at, am I addressing both 10.2 and 10.3?
We'll start with 10.2 and you use your 3 minutes for that and then we'll go to 10.3.
Okay. It's very brief. It should be okay. So just looking at 10.2, thank you. Noticing in the accounts there that obviously it seems to be an improvement than what we're seeing back in the SRV as it came out later last year. Back at that time, though, I'm just querying there was a negative $6.4 million net operating loss in that SRV. In this document detailed for the May accounts for the FY 24-25 full year accounts are saying a negative $2 million number. So I'm just wondering what the process is around when that's updated. I don't believe there's been a change to the long-term financial plan over the last 6 months. So just be understanding why the change in those numbers. Obviously, but though this is a very substantial improvement in terms of those numbers. So yeah, first point is questions around governance and changing those budget numbers. It's great to see a positive improvement. We'd hope to obviously see that continue. And lastly, the third question or third point is, will the long-term financial plan be updated to reflect the changing economic situation moving forward?
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Speaker? No. Well, as you are addressing them in seriatim, I'll ask you to stay and we will suspend the standing orders for the public forum and allow you to address 10.3 directly so you don't have to jump back and forth.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak again. So addressing 10.3, again, I notice a very considerable change in what looks like the cash and investments at the end of the year. So currently sitting at $143 million versus the long-term financial plan addressed in the SRV back in November was at $80 million. I'm assuming there's been some deferrals of some expenses potentially related to the pool. It'd be great to have some transparency about what those deferrals look like and whether the balance is indeed improved or it's just a deferral to the next financial year. And again, when will the long-term financial plan be updated to reflect the changing situation?
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Speaker? Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Councillors, that brings us to item 10.2. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For 10.2, I'll move the recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Santa, is there any discussion?
I'm happy to wait for my right reply. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Keane?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd actually like to pose those questions that our resident, Mr. Loyerton, has asked council about the one, when is the long-term financial plan going to be updated? And two, the cash position, the change in cash position. So if I'd like to put that forward, please.
Madam Mayor, the delivery program outlines a action to review financial modelling and update the long-term financial plan in the first, I believe, 6 months of the next financial year. What was the question in relation to?
Well, I think we
Is
can
it-
keep the cash one for the next item relates to the following item.
Also, while I've got a moment, please, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to make a comment that, yes, it is good to see the improvement and that we are looking at a surplus, which is fantastic for the council. It's a positive message. And at the end of the day, we don't need to cut services. We have a surplus and we can reassure North Sydney residents that we don't need to cut any services.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Do you wish to exercise the right of reply?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. This is no great thing at all. This is a point in time. And I'm glad to hear that you won't be supporting any changes in services when the actual financials come out, Councillor Keane. We note that off-street car parking revenue continues to decline. I expect to result in a result of total income compared to 2024. The money that is looking good is purely because that we have the delays from the inherited disastrous North Sydney Pool project, which you voted for, Councillor Keane, and the delays have actually ended up in interest income for the council. I'm not sure that's something that really is to be celebrated, nor that should be able to be relied upon at all. This is really just about timing. I mean, the fact that you're celebrating the delay is amazing. You're celebrating the delay in the North Sydney Pool, which has reduced forecast net income by 2 million, reduced forecast expenditure, providing a net benefit. Can't really say that I'm that thrilled about that, nor about the 2.7 million in higher than anticipated income, because the pool is delayed because of the terrible contract that was entered into by a previous council. And the other issue is that we are carrying staff vacancies, which I think puts an enormous cost on our staff, and I don't think that any of it is sustainable at this point in time. Celebrate all you like, but the community won't be celebrating.
Thank you. Having had the right of reply by the mover, I'm going to put the item. All those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us to
Yeah, I was in favour, sorry.
that's carried unanimously. We'll now move to item 10.3. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Berrigan, seconded by Councillor Holding. Do you wish to speak?
I'll reserve my right.
Councillor Keane, I think you're going to pose the question in relation.
Yes, I will. I would like to pose the question from Mr. Loyerton around how much of the 63 million will be spent in 25-26 and which projects.
I think the question Mr. Loyerton posed was the cash investments and the
Yes.
change in circumstances, the deferral of the expenses, were they related to the North Sydney
Yes.
Olympic Pool project?
If we're talking about cash balances as they sit right now, as the report indicates, there has been a deferral of an amount of 30-something million dollars for the North Sydney Olympic Pool. So that will be pushed back. I would anticipate that, and as has been pointed out, it's at a point in time. Once you take out the funds that are required for the pool project and the funds that are designated for capital works and the two reserves that have been set up for the income from the Crown Lands leases, you are back down to a similar position that we have talked about before, with the one change being those additional income items and improvements that we've had in our costs over the past year. You'll remember when we did community consultation, there was a target of $7 million that we were working towards to be able to improve this year's budget to ensure liquidity. And that's what we've been working towards. As the report said in the previous report, a lot of that is one-off, and some of that is staff savings, which I don't believe is sustainable. The same goes for materials and contracts. We have been cutting back on expenditure, but it will have a flow-on impact to future years. So whilst we will do remodelling and we will look at our cash reserves following the results that we have at the end of this year, I do expect that there will still be a need, noting that the operational deficit is not the only financial challenge of council. The larger challenge is the infrastructure backlog issue that you face.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Berger, do you wish to speak to the item? You moved it.
Nobody else wants to speak?
Do you wish to reserve the right of reply?
Yep. I'll have a right to reply.
Councillor Keane, did you wish to speak to this
No,
item?
fine, thank you.
In which case, there is no reply. It's just a speak.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that in the unrestricted reserves, say that the council has an unrestricted cash balance of 17.2 million, a decrease of 4.4. This is not good news at all. And there was a lot of talk about reserves as being surpluses over recent months. And I thought I'd just give some context about the internal reserves or unrestricted reserves for other councils so that we have context. Our North Sydney Council's average over 10 years, 2011 to 2024, was about 28 million. Lane Cove for 23-24 was 23, unrestricted reserves 74 million for Lane Cove, Northern Beaches 138, Waverley 79, Willoughby 76, Hillshire 283, Parramatta 242. This is really scary stuff. It means that we can't do our planning and we can't deliver the services, but it's not just the services, it's the infrastructure, and more importantly, it's the infrastructure renewals that we cannot deliver. That's the Oval, that's the library, that's the building that we're in at the moment. None of this is to be celebrated at all. There are going to be some really tough decisions to make, and any celebration of this kind of result really shows a little bit of naivety as to how local government finances work.
Any further discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against, and that is carried. That takes us to the rest of the agenda. There are two items that Councillor Carr has indicated that she wishes to speak to. Item 10.1 and item 10.6. Councillor Berger, do you have a procedural motion?
I do, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the following as items on Globo, meaning that we accept the recommendation in the council agenda for item 9.1.
No, I'd like to speak to that.
Access and inclusion.
Yeah.
Item 10.4.
I'd like to speak to that.
10.5. So the first one is 10.5. 10.7.
I'd like to speak to that.
10.8. 10.9. 10.10. 10.11. 10.12. And 10.13, noting that for the tenders, it's to accept the recommendation in the confidential.
Is there a seconder for moving by exception items 10.5, 10.9, 10.10, 10.11, 10.12 and 10.13? Seconded by Councillor Welsh. I'll put the procedural motion. All those in favour? And that is carried. What that means is that Council has resolved to accept the recommendations in each of those items that have been pulled out by exception. And that takes us back to the rest of the agenda. Item 9.1, Access and Inclusion Committee Minutes, 27th of May. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Do you wish to speak to the item?
No, Mayor, I'll reserve a right of reply. Thank you.
Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam Mayor. Okay, I think the Access and Inclusion Committee is a valuable resource to help with decision-making for many council projects. However, I strongly disagree with the committee's recommendation from the minutes of the last meeting that council advocate to the state government for e-bikes to be registered with license plates for identification. I support keeping e-bikes accessible and unburdened by unnecessary regulation, specifically the idea that standard e-bikes should not require licensing. E-bikes are transforming the way people move around our community. They're affordable, sustainable, and space efficient. For many people, like older residents like myself, those with mobility issues, or anyone tackling North Sydney's hills, e-bikes make cycling possible where it otherwise wouldn't be. On the surface, licensing may sound like a common sense safety measure, but in practice, it risks undermining everything we're trying to achieve with active transport. Most e-bikes on our streets are limited to 250 watts and cut out at 25 kilometers an hour. They function like ordinary bicycles, just with a wee bit of extra help. Requiring licenses for them would be like asking every cyclist to get a driver's license, unnecessary, expensive, and likely to deter use. We know that e-bikes help reduce traffic congestion, lower emissions, and free up public transport. These are exactly the modes of transport that we should be encouraging, not putting barriers in front of. If there are safety concerns, and there are, let's address them through education, infrastructure, and sensible speed regulation. Let's not create red tape that punishes people for choosing cleaner, greener transport. Licensing may make sense for higher powered e-bikes or those capable of speeds similar to mopeds, but for the everyday commuter, the parent on the school run, or the senior getting to the shops, a license requirement is disproportionate and counterproductive. Let's keep e-bikes safe, simple, and accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against, and that is carried. That brings us to item 10.1, matters outstanding to 26 May. Is there a mover for the recommendation to note the report? Moved by Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Holding. Councillor Carr, you indicated you wish to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I note that item 11.4, which is a notice of motion by Councillor Santa, which was approved on the 10th of October 2022, is still outstanding. The motion was passed almost 3 years ago. Why is it still outstanding, and what challenges has Council had in completing this motion?
Madam Mayor, for my benefit, can you please advise what that motion was?
It's regarding the voting in precincts, that individuals who attend precinct meetings should be allowed to be noted that they're voting versus having a precinct as one vote. So it will be more than one vote appearing.
Councillor Carr, I may have to take that on notice and report back.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I noticed though on the council papers, the next steps on this motion make reference to the draft 25-29 community engagement strategy. In the document, which will be considered later, on page 20, it says council will adhere to the principle of one value, one person, one vote. Does this then mean the feedback from a precinct that is attended by 20 people, the comments from the precinct will be taken on an individual basis rather than one vote from the precinct, which is current practice? I'd like an answer on that. You may take it on notice.
Through you, Madam Mayor, where any submission is received in relation to a community consultation, if a precinct does put forward a vote in relation to that submission, then that will certainly be taken into consideration when the report is written for council.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Anyone wish to speak to the item? I'll put the item, all those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us to item 10.4. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by councillor Berge, seconded by councillor Holding. Do you wish to speak to it, councillor Berge? None. Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I just wanted to make an amendment to it that instead of applying for the maximum fee, that council applies for the minimum fee for 25-26. This is on the basis of the financial position of council. I think it aligns the fact that right at the top of council, we are putting our money and leading where we are in terms of saving this council money. In aggregate, it's about $180,000. That is material. We've just heard from Councillor Berge about the staff being held back.
Okay,
Yes,
so you can't speak to the
sorry,
amendment
apologies.
until there's an amendment moved. So you've moved an amendment, which is that council take the minimum. Is it seconded by anyone? Seconded by councillor Keane. You may speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. Just summarising what I said. Apologies for entering into that ahead of time. We need to lead by example. This is leading by example, paying ourselves the maximum during a period where we've put together a request for an SRV, which ultimately was unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. But we do need to lead by example. We do need to show staff that we wear the difficulty of this situation as much as any individual within the business. And I think voting for the maximum fee to be payable to councillors at a time where we're in this situation, it sends the wrong message. And we should, for this year, and then reassess in a year's time, be voting for the minimum. Thank you.
If you could turn off your microphone. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Those against? And that is lost. We return to the motion. We have a mover and a seconder. Are there any speakers to the motion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. That now takes us to item 10.6, the Community Engagement Strategy Post-Exhibition Report. Is there a mover for adoption? Moved by councillor Santa, seconded by councillor Berge. Do you wish to speak to the item, councillor Santa? Reserve your right of reply. Councillor Carr, you have indicated that you wish to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, on page 34 of the post-exhibition report, it's reported that a significant number of flyers have been distributed through precincts, noting that there is this consultation available. I find it extraordinary that council has taken the distribution number of flyers as community consultation. I have spoken with at least 2 of the precincts named in the report, and what I was told by the volunteer committee members, let alone the residents attending those precincts, did not have the foggiest idea about this particular consultation. This council needs to do much better with community consultation. Our record is not good. We need to uplift our game. On the topic of the STAR committees, Milsom Precinct's comments all centered around the details of how these committees will be set up, which I also raised previously. The STAR committee implementation, of course, was dependent on the SRV, given the result of the SRV.
I have to draw you to order. That is not true. Those advisory committees weren't to be funded by the SRV. They come from the general budget item for community engagement.
Okay.
Ask you to withdraw and apologise.
I withdraw and apologise. I would like then to move a motion to remove these committees from the plan before the strategy is adopted. When that council prepares a document detailing how these committees will operate together with funding requirements and undertaking appropriate community consultation prior to presenting this to a future council meeting for addition to the community engagement strategy. Given that a lot of individuals that I have spoken to anyway have issues with how these committees will operate, I think it's important to have a
Okay, I'm
very
going to stop you
detailed
right
plan.
there. So are you moving an amendment?
I am.
Okay, moving an amendment, which is to defer the STAR committees.
Committees.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by councillor Keane. So you are now speaking to your amendment. I'll just ask the mover and seconder, do you intend to take that on? No, thank you.
So, individuals that I have spoken to and precinct committees and Milson Precinct Committee also made comments to this, did say that they have concerns on how these committees will be run. Therefore, I think it's important before we adopt them at a council meeting, that there is a lot more explanation on how these committees will be run, how the members are going to be selected, and what the expectation from these committees is going to be before we have a report back at council, at a council meeting that we can vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Keane.
Thank you, councillor Carr. I agree. These STAR committees are going to replace the previous streetscape committees as well. So Cremorne, Crows Nest, Kirribilli and Neutral Bay. This is a real shame. These committees were extremely effective. It's also reviewing the proposed STAR committees to align with the draft revised delivery program and operational plan. So that's attached to the informing strategies, which are unfunded, and I'm against.
Again, I'm going to call you to order. The informing strategies are not unfunded. There were certain projects within them that were reliant on the SRV, but they're there to guide the whole of council's operation. So I'd ask again that you withdraw and apologise.
I withdraw and apologise.
If there are no further speakers to the amendment, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And that is lost. That takes us back to the motion. Are there any speakers to the motion? Councillor Holding.
Yeah, look, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to pick up on some of the comments from Councillor Carr. I'm a former chair of a precinct, and I know that Councillor Santa has also spent some time doing that. And, you know, this is some time ago, but it's a very common practice for when the precinct flyers go out, the precinct would place their agenda items on the front, and on the back, the council would very regularly utilise the space on the back to advise about the latest Have Your Say or other items like that. It's been very common. It's gone on for years and years. And I don't really see a problem with the flyers are being put out. The money that's being spent is the council's money. So why shouldn't they submit things on the back of those flyers? And if it's included as it is, the precincts themselves are a community consultation, and the flyers from the precincts are also part of community consultation. So I don't really see a huge problem with that. Just wanted to pick up on that technicality. Thanks.
Are there any other speakers? If there aren't, I'm going to put the motion, all those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us now to the pesticide use notification plan, which is recommendation to put it out on public exhibition. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Antonini. Do you wish to speak to the item?
No, certainly. I think.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the item? Councillor Carr, Keane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just around the consultation and being thorough with our community consultation. Here in the papers, it's put that we're placing a copy on public display in council chambers. We're placing a copy on the council website, a notice in the Mossman Daily, North Shore Times and the New South Wales Government Gazette. I'd like to look at some social media around this as well. Can we look at a bit more progressive social media digital strategy when it comes to community consultation, because it's very important that we're reaching all levels of community.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. That then brings us to the notice of motion. Councillor Welsh, your motion.
Yes, I would like to move the motion.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Beregi. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, I won't reiterate what was already written in the motion, just want to give it a bit of background. And it's that the Beach Watch program is a long-standing state government initiative that monitors and reports on the safety and quality of coastal and estuarine swimming sites across New South Wales. In early 2024, the New South Wales government commenced consultation on a proposal to shift the funding responsibility for Beach Watch from the state to local councils, cost shifting. North Sydney Council, together with the Sydney Coastal Councils Group, of which I am the chair, strongly objected to this proposed cost shifting. On the 27th of May, 2024, Council formally resolved to affirm that Beach Watch is a New South Wales government responsibility and to advocate for its continued state funding. Following widespread advocacy from councils and regional organization, the Honourable Penny Sharp MLC, Minister for the Environment, recently confirmed that the New South Wales government will continue to fund the Beach Watch program. This notice of motion acknowledges that decision and the collective advocacy that contributed to its outcome. I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berkey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Welsh. I would just like to acknowledge your representation of council on this committee, and this is a great result. Anything that goes against cost shifting, which is a ongoing battle that we have, and has the state government pay for their responsibilities, is terrific. So thank you, and if you could take that back to the committee, that would be terrific.
If there are no other speakers, I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And that brings us to close of the meeting. Thank you all for your participation. Till next time.